Hello and welcome to Cioindex's Thought Leadership Series. This webinar is on the science of the IT organization, how to build a customer-focused, entrepreneurial, team-oriented organization. We are delighted to have you on board for this very interesting and important presentation. My name is Sonika Nihalani and I am your host. At this point, I would like to go over some housekeeping rules. This webinar is being recorded. It will last for approximately 60 minutes, of which we will utilize about 45 to 50 minutes for the presentation and the rest for your questions. If your connection is dropped, please dial back in. In the unlikely event that our connection is dropped, please wait 5 minutes and then dial back in. Please take a look at your control panel and see some of its salient features. Remember, you can ask us questions at any time using the Q&A button, or if you need assistance, you may use the chat button to chat with me directly. You will also be asked to answer some poll questions, time permitting, during this webinar. You have approximately 1 minute at the time we ask that poll question. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Dean Meyer. Dean is one of the original proponents of running shared services organizations within companies as business within a business, where every managerial group is an entrepreneurship funded to produce products and services to customers. He has implemented this philosophy in corporate, government, and nonprofit organizations through the careful design of culture, organizational structure, and internal market economics. Dean is the author of 7 books, numerous monographs, and countless articles. Dean is both a visionary and a mechanic. He paints a clear picture of how organizations should work and implements that vision through pragmatic, structured, and participative change processes. Without further ado, I present to you Mr. Dean Meyer. Welcome, Dean. It's all yours.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Sonika, and thank you all for coming. I appreciate your interest in organizational structure because it's really one of the most powerful influencers of performance of the IT organization, of the people within it, and it can really enhance careers or really mess them up. Structure can send you in conflicting directions, trying to do too many things, put you in conflict of interest situations. It can pit people against one another. It could put you in a situation where your boss expects the impossible. It's really a powerful influencer of performance. So in the next 50 minutes, I'm going to try to share with you a science that's developed for over a quarter of a century. Structure is not a matter of art or opinions or personalities or fads. It's hard science. And so I've got a lot to share. I'm going to go at a very fast speed. And when we're done, we'll take some questions, and then I hope that for those of you who are seriously interested, you'll get in touch with me. I'm always happy to schedule a chat with qualified executives in private over the phone after we're done. Here's what I thought we'd cover today, Sonika. I'd like to start by putting on the table some fundamental principles of organization design, and then introduce you to a framework of all of the building blocks. Building blocks, I use that term because these are a framework of the things that you can assemble into your own unique organization chart. Then we'll talk about how you divide people up within an organization chart at the next level. I'll talk to you about the rainbow exercise for diagnosing your current organization chart and for designing a new organization chart if that's what is called for. But you know, the organization chart can't work if teamwork doesn't work. If we don't have teamwork across boundaries, then regardless of what the organization chart says, we're going to revert back into independent stovepipes. And so we must talk about teamwork whenever we talk about organization structure. We'll talk about what it takes to build really effective, high-performance, cross-boundary teamwork, and time permitting, we'll close on how to go about implementing a restructuring. And perhaps you can give me some feedback as to whether that interests you or not as we proceed. So let's start with the fundamental principles of structure. Sonika, is all well? Are we ready to go?
Yes, Dean.
Here we go. Okay, then. First, the first principle, so important that I call it the golden rule of organizational design. And it is simply this: authority and accountability must match. If ever you divide authority and accountability, give one person authority and the other one accountability, then the person with authority becomes an unconstrained tyrant, and the one with accountability becomes a victim and a scapegoat and can't get the job done. This is fundamental. No matter what the organization chart looks like, we've got to match authority and accountability. So empowerment doesn't mean a blank check. It means specifically this: authority and accountability must match. Second, let me ask you to think about this. Why would we form organizations at all? Why would your organization, your IT department of 10 or 100 or 1,000 people, perform any better than an equal number of individuals? And the answer comes from cybernetics, that is system science, where the term variety means complexity times pace, complexity times volume over time. So think of it as bandwidth or throughput. And as human beings, we can only process so much variety. We can only think so many thoughts in a day. We can only read so much. We can only know so much. We're finite in our variety processing capabilities. So we could use our precious brain cycles to know a little bit about everything. That's the red horizontal bar, the jack of all trades and master of none. The blue is the person who knows absolutely everything about one subject and nothing about anything else. This person I call the nerd because you can't really talk to them or collaborate with them. When I speak of a specialist, I mean that green T-shaped person, one who knows a little bit about everything so as to be able to collaborate, but who brings real depth to one field of study. Now, an organization of those red generalists will perform no better than an equal number of individuals. But when we allow people to specialize, the T-shaped blue, then they can bring real depth to one field of study. And through focus, through specialization, they accumulate more knowledge, they keep up with the literature, they gain more experience. It means lower cost, higher quality, faster time to market, faster pace of innovation, all those good things. And when you combine a bunch of T-shaped people into an organization, then the organization has both breadth and depth. So I want to say this very clearly. We form organizations specifically to allow people to specialize. And the more you allow people to specialize, the greater the potential performance of the organization as a whole. Conversely, an organization of generalists performs no better than an equal number of individuals. But there's a catch. What do you think of a bunch of specialists all going every which way without collaboration? Well, it's actually worse than a bunch of generalists because nobody sees the whole picture. We can never get the job done. So specialization depends on teamwork. And in fact, this is the gating factor in so many organizations. If we don't team well across boundaries, then what are you going to do? You're going to have all of the skills you need to get your job done. We revert back to those independent stovepipes of generalists. So specialization and teamwork go hand in hand. Third, what is the nature of the specialty? How do we define the bottom of the T? This is where I have been talking for all these decades about the business within a business paradigm. I think every manager at every level of the organization should be an entrepreneur running a small business within a business, one who understands that he or she is funded to produce products and services for customers, whether they're others within the IT department or clients out there in the business. Everybody is an entrepreneur. That's the best way to define your specialty, by what you sell. And I say sell whether or not money changes hands, by what business you're in, what you sell, not what you do, not competencies, not processes. This business within a business paradigm brings about tremendous customer focus, entrepreneurial creativity and innovation, and, as we'll discuss a little bit later, teamwork. So the nature of the bottom of the T, the nature of the specialty, define it by what business you run. Fourth, focus. The organization chart as a whole needs clear boundaries. If boundaries are vague, that means people are going to wander out of their specialty and end up competing with one another. Of course, we've got to be sure there are no gaps, because if any function is missing, that just won't happen with reliability or quality. And we want to be sure there are no overlapping domains, because when domains overlap, that's equivalent to paying people to fight with one another. And we don't need that kind of internal competition. There's plenty of competition out there in the real world, in the market. We don't need to be competing with one another within the IT department. And feasible requisite variety, what that means is we want to design jobs that are doable, that normal people can win at. You see, if you design a job that requires a superachiever, well, you're going to have a difficult time recruiting, and even if you find a superachiever, they'll just break even and everybody else would fail. We've got to design jobs that normal people can succeed at, and then if you have any superachievers, well, that's great. They can superachieve. Feasible requisite variety, focused jobs. As we cluster jobs in an organization chart under a common manager, let's presume that we're investing in teamwork, that anybody can talk to anybody, that anybody can team with anybody. So how then do we cluster? It's not based on with whom you work, who you talk to all the time. It should be based on professional synergies. So we get together all those engineers of various types, and they swap tricks of the trade and learn from one another, and they work for a common boss who develops a common subculture. And it's that boss's job to be sure all the engineering disciplines are covered completely and without overlaps and without gaps. And similarly with all the service managers, service delivery people, if they're under a common boss, then that boss can ensure that all of the domains are covered completely and without gaps or overlaps. So cluster people by professional synergy, not by who they talk to or who they work with. Those are the fundamental principles that guide me, and I know that was really quick. I'm watching the clock. So let me take you on to the building blocks of structure. This is a framework of all of the lines of business that exist in every IT organization. Well, for that matter, in any function within a company or within the company as a whole. This is a language for describing any organization chart. And before I begin, I want to put two caveats on the table. First of all, what I'm about to show you is not an off-the-shelf organization chart. There is no one right organization chart that fits everybody. It's a language for talking about any organization chart. So I want to be very clear about that. It's not like you can get your org chart out of the book. This is just a language that you can use to analyze your current organization chart or to design a new one. And I also want to tell you that it's a funny language, because if I said operations to one of you, do I have any reason to believe that you mean by that the same thing that another person in this webinar would mean by the word operations? We all define it differently. We could have different lines of business within our operations group. So I wanted to choose a language that you wouldn't recognize so that I could define it fresh. So forgive me that funny language. It is intentional. So let me take you on a whirlwind tour of the building blocks of structure. We'll start with service bureaus. Service bureaus keep things running efficiently, reliably, safely, economically. These folks hate innovation. Why? Because innovation disrupts smooth operations. Their job is to keep it running. Of course, they're clever people. They'll solve the problem by end of the day. They will innovate when it's safe, but their focus is on service delivery. There are two distinct types of service bureaus in the model: machine-based versus people-based. The machine-based service bureaus are those where the service is produced by the machine, and I mean that in the broadest sense, in the metaphorical sense. I mean any asset. It could be hardware, it could be software, it could be databases, but the service is produced by the asset, and the people are there to keep the assets running. So that would include your computer center, network operations, all the way on up to your enterprise data warehouse or BI environment. Here's some examples in IT. The black boxes, not the gray ones, examples of machine-based service bureaus. At the bottom, you see the data center with rack space and floor space and cages and power and the operator services. And building up, you see the various layers of businesses within an IT machine service bureau. People service bureaus also like to keep things running, but they are the services produced by people, and if they use machines, it's just to make the people more productive. There are three types of people service bureaus: product support, internal support, and unrelated lines of business. So product support are people services like our customer service or service desk or help desk. There we're getting a service from people to enhance our experience with the whole rest of the IT line of products and services. Internal support would be like a project management office that's there to help others succeed at managing projects. or field technicians that act as eyes and hands in the field, as agents of everybody here. And then other lines of business, well, this would be like the IT business office, IT administration, IT finance, IT HR. If you're big enough to have that within your IT department, I will call that a people service bureau, even though when I talk to a CFO, they have all the building blocks within finance. When I talk to the head of HR, they have all these building blocks within HR. But from an IT point of view, we'll call finance and HR the people service bureaus. Service bureaus keep things running. Technologists, these are our engineers. They maintain a locus of expertise in a particular domain of technology, and they use that expertise to design, build, repair, and support solutions. So these folks love innovation. They may not be able to run things very well, but they love to invent new stuff. They're out on the bleeding edge, reading the literature, playing with toys, and learning to build the next generation of solutions. Now here, the law of requisite variety really strikes home. In IT, we have such a tremendous diversity of engineering sciences, so we've got to sort it out somehow. I'll start by dividing it into two major categories, applications versus base. Now the word application in our industry has a bunch of three different meanings, and so I want to tell you which meaning I'm using here. First, I do not mean motive for buying, as in one application of Excel is budgeting and another application of Excel is project planning. No, I don't want to use the word that way, because your customer's motive is quicksand. You can't design structure on motives. And I don't mean the layer above operating system, as systems level people will describe it. Everything above operating system, well, that could include not only what we call business applications, but also end user computing tools and automated manufacturing. I don't want to use it that broadly. What I mean by application here is the third definition, business applications. In IT, that means data object specific solutions. For example, the general ledger application, financial applications, are applications whose primary purpose is to manage information about money. The HR applications, primary purpose is to manage information about people, employees. Customer applications, manage information about a different kind of people, customers. So those are solutions whose primary intent is to manage information about a particular data object. That's what we mean by the word business applications. Data object specific solutions. And then base technologists are everything else, data object independent. There are four categories in base tech. Platforms, that's computing like PCs and servers and supercomputers, middleware, DBMS, and in the telecom arena, everything from bandwidth up through networks, voice data, and integrated networks. Platforms are the hardware and the software whose primary intent is to manage the hardware. Technologist science, these are people who study the methods and tools of IT, like information engineering, SDLC, case tools, languages and compilers, and hard computer science. End user computing looks small here, but this is huge. This means tools for thinking. It's not just Microsoft Office. It includes browsers and BI, interactive tools intended for normal people, not IT people. Tools for thinking, data object independent. And there's so much strategic value there. It's really underappreciated in our industry. And finally, information handling disciplines. This is artificial intelligence, management science, statistics, actuarial, mathematics. They build models and equations that may be embedded in our other tools. So we have applications technologists, base technologists. What they have in common is these are the engineers who design, build, repair, and support solutions. So I want you so far to think about the difference between, let me say, Boeing and American Airlines. Who's in the airplane business? Well, both, Boeing and American. How about who's in the automobile business? Ford versus Hertz? Think of Hewlett-Packard versus AOL. In any industry, you're going to see both technologists and service bureaus. So we can't just say infrastructure. There are infrastructure engineers, base technologists, and there are infrastructure owners who sell services, machine service bureaus. And look at any technology, DBMS, we have DBMS base technologists, the engineers, and we have DBMS services, over under the machine-based service bureaus. So these are very different lines of business. Engineering businesses sell a completely different catalog, have a completely different kind of culture, different set of competencies than the service bureaus, which are more service management oriented. They have their own competencies. It's a distinct profession. Pressing on, the next column is coordinators. Coordinators help others, but in part by helping them come to agreement. For example, technology standards, protocols, X dot whatever, IEEE whatever, APIs. Those are standards, technology standards that constrain design for the purpose of future integration. They allow us to act independently and still have some hope of plugging things together. In your home, think of the shape of the electrical outlet, the 3 prongs. That's a standard. You can build whatever kind of rooms you want, and you can build whatever kind of buildings you want, but if you're going to put in power, it's going to be that shape of outlet. So we come to agreement on standards to allow us to be very responsive to the business without knowing what we'll build in the future and still have some hope of integration. Then the design coordinators are the same thing at a different level. These are design patterns. Think of the difference between building codes and city planning, standards versus design patterns. Taken together, this is, I think, the best definition of enterprise architect. Now, think about who is qualified to decide on standards, and the answer, of course, is nobody, because while there may be a base technologist that's the expert on a given standard, while all of the applications technologists have to develop to it, and the machine service bureaus have to run it, and the help desk has to support it, and in some cases, clients have an interest like look and feel standards. So there's a whole community of stakeholders. The job of an enterprise architect or standards coordinator is to pull together the right stakeholders and to facilitate consensus. And when you do that, you'll not only take advantage of all of their different perspectives and all of their depth of knowledge, you also won't have a compliance problem, because if they chose it, then they'll live with it. So that's why I call it a coordinator. It's not a king who dictates standards. It's a facilitator of consensus, one who brings people together to agree on standards and design. Good example of a coordinator. Here's another example of a coordinator, IT planning. Well, whose job is it to develop the IT business plan, whether that's the operating plan, the one-year plan, or the strategic plan? Of course, if everybody isn't empowered as entrepreneurs, the answer has to be everybody. Every one of our managers, every one of our internal entrepreneurs should be developing business plans for their own little business within a business. But of course, business planning is a profession in its own right. There are skills and methods. And furthermore, all of our independent plans have to add up to the total IT plan. So the job of a planning coordinator, again, is not to dictate the plan, not to write the plan, but rather to teach others to write the plan, and to teach everybody, help everybody write the plan with common frameworks and processes and assumptions and so on. And then at the end of the day, ensure that all of those plans are integrated into an IT-wide plan, a coordinator function, not a dictator function. And there are various other kinds of coordinators in that same spirit. Organizational effectiveness, that's what I do for a living, things like culture and structure and resource governance processes. Responding to an audit, I don't mean an auditor, I mean the way we respond to external auditors, that may need coordination. Our regulatory compliance, we may need an expert on regulations that helps all of us comply. Business continuity, terribly important. We all need to be engaged in business continuity planning, not just machine service bureaus. And yet all of those plans have to add up to a total integrated plan. Security, I don't mean security admin. That's a service bureau issue. I don't mean security technologies. That's in every technologist domain. But security policy, the real meaning of the CSO, the Chief Security Officer, that's a coordinator function, facilitating consensus on policy and coordinating compliance, that is, investigations of incidents and preventative measures. And information policy is the newest of the bunch. Things like how do you determine ownership of data and the rights and responsibilities of owners, retention in the era of e-records. There's a lot of complicated stuff going on there that requires policy coordination. So a variety of coordinators help others in a coordinated fashion. Next, what I call consultancies. Now that's a euphemism. This is really sales and marketing for our business within a business, but you know, I can't say sales for an internal service provider for shared services because our clients might get offended. But that's really what it is. Sales, not in the sense of a used car salesman that's twisting arms and closing techniques and trying to get you to buy more, buying more IT, well, that's an expense to the rest of the organization. No, sales in the sense of relationship building and helping clients solve their problems and grow into their strategic imperatives by using our products and services. That's sales in the best sense, counselor selling or partnership selling. And that's why I chose the term consultancy for sales and marketing. They deliver two things: relationships, excellent relations with the business, and strategic alignment. This is where we understand the unique needs of our various clients out there in the business units and discover those 1,000% return on investment, million-dollar payoff strategic ideas. Consultancy, the bottom of the T, is knowing clients and their business and the linkage between their business and the IT product line. They are unbiased. They sell the whole store in a business-driven fashion. Now, there are methods in here, methods of discovery, needs assessment or requirements planning, discovering those high payoff opportunities. They broker contracts with the rest of IT. They facilitate consortia. They estimate the benefits and not just cost displacement, but the strategic benefits. They are the account reps that do account reviews and facilitate relationship issues. And they participate in clients' business strategy planning, we hope, if we're invited. So there are skills and methods here that are distinct from the rest of these lines of business, these building blocks. And so I really want to emphasize to you that consultancy is not a part-time job for your senior managers. It's a profession in its own right and critically important to both relationships and strategic alignment. There are 4 types of consultancy in the model. Those are the account reps, the relationship managers. Let me jump down to retail. That's the default point of contact. Retail would be lower level, and so the account consultants would be proactive with the real opinion leaders, while the retail would handle all the day-to-day traffic. Function consultant, that's a specialist in what clients know, a specialist in clients' professions or clients' business process. For example, an expert in e-business would be a function consultant there to advise any business unit and still selling the entire store, the entire IT product line. Finally, marketing, that's one-to-many, many-to-one. Marketing one-to-many is marketing communications. That would be the IT website, newsletters, brochures, awareness events. And market research, many-to-one, that would be things like customer satisfaction studies. Or wouldn't it be cool to ask, let's say we had this innovative new technology. Clients, you've never seen it before and can't imagine it. How much of it would you buy and what would you be willing to pay? Wouldn't it be great? Well, market researchers know how to answer questions like that. I don't know how they do it. But that would give us some guidance on our research directions. So marketing is both marketing communications and marketing research. There is one final building block, and that is audit. They're in the business of inspecting others and perhaps vetoing others. And this is a legitimate line of business. There are cases where the only way to really control a complex system like an organization is through human inspection, where we don't have endemic controls. Think about the government inspecting the meat packers, because you and I can't know by looking at a piece of meat in the grocery store whether or not it's tainted with E. coli or botulism. So we count on auditors to check the meat packers on our behalf. But I want to tell you, this is really important. Audit is not compatible with a service relationship. You can't say, I'm from the Internal Revenue Service, I'm here to help. So this is one line of business that really has to be arm's length, and they'll be the first to tell you that they have to be arm's length, separate from the rest of the building blocks. Never mix audit with anything else. So there you have it. The building blocks of organizational structure, all of the lines of business that exist in any organization chart. Now, how do we combine these building blocks, and how do we divide people up? Do we divide up IT by business unit? Do we divide it up by technology, by platform, by service? Well, let's take a look. Henry Mintzberg of McGill defined 6 different ways to divide people up on an organization chart. You could divide them up by what they know or the process they work on or time, like shifts. You could divide them up by what they produced, outputs, what they sell, as in line of business. You can divide them up by client, matching the business unit structure, or by geography. Well, here's the key point. The way you divide people up tells them what they're supposed to be good at. You divide people up by business unit, they become very good at knowing those clients and generalists with regard to technology and IT services. You divide them up by platform, they become very good at knowing those platforms and become generalists with regard to the business, and so on. So the key is you want to use a basis for substructure. Dividing people up at the next level of the organization chart, you want to use a basis for substructure that exactly matches what they're supposed to be good at. Now, there is no one right basis for substructure across all IT, but when you look within each of the building blocks, you'll see a natural basis for substructure. In the service bureaus, it's by the kind of service they offer. And so in machine service bureaus, remember all these different lines of business? Those are classed as services, regardless of technology platform, regardless of client business unit. What services do they offer? That would be the best way to divide up the service bureaus. Technologists by knowledge, by the domain of technology. Now in applications, how do you divide up applications people? Applications engineers? It should be by data object. The bottom of the T is supposed to be solutions that are primarily intended to manage information about a particular topic, not by client business unit, not by business process, but by data object. You see, for a given data object like finance, all of the business units need access to financial systems, and all of the different business processes are going to touch financial data at some point. We don't need a plethora of different financial systems, one for each business unit. We need one repository of expertise and an integrated set of financial systems. Applications technologists should be subdivided by object, by data object. In the base technologists, you saw the taxonomy, platforms, technology, science, end user computing, and discipline. The coordinators by what they coordinate, so that's pretty straightforward. That's the list. The consultancies, the one and only group that should be subdivided by business unit is account consultancy. Their job, their bottom of the T, is to know the business units. So you divide them up by business units so they specialize in knowing those clients and their business strategies and the linkage to IT, the strategic use of IT in that kind of business. That's the only building block that lends itself to being subdivided by client business unit. The function consultants by knowledge of a client profession or business process, like e-business. Retail by geography. And marketing, rarely big enough to divide up, but if you were, you'd split marketing communications from market research and by profession within there. And audit by what they audit. So now you have in front of you the science of structure. There you have it. Let's talk about how to apply it. The rainbow exercise. There's a picture of my backyard. I call it the rainbow exercise because we use colors here. I want you to imagine that you draw on a nice big flip chart your current organization chart. A bunch of boxes wired together, and use a black pen to do that. And let's go over that and say, let's revisit, what do we mean by machine-based service bureau? Now put a brown stripe underneath any box that's doing anything like machine service bureau, and yellow for people service bureau. Let's remind ourselves of the difference between applications and base technologists. Now put a blue stripe under everybody who's doing applications technologists, and purple for base, and so on, through all the colors. And now you're looking at your organization chart color-coded. What do you think you're going to see? A lot of colors? A lot of rainbows? Typically, yes. That's why we call it the rainbow exercise. Well, so far we've just been gathering data. Now how do we interpret it? 4 key diagnostic questions. First, gaps. If you see any color that is missing, or any color that is a part-time job for a lot of people but nobody's primary attention, I'd call that a gap. Now where you see a gap, what the model predicts is that's a function that's not happening with world-class excellence. Nobody has time to really study it and perfect it, and it's not a reliable process. It's, when we get around to it, it's not our primary focus. It's catch as catch can. Next, look at the boxes with lots of colors on them, with more than one color, the rainbows. The first thing you'll suspect is impossible requisite variety. This is not a volume issue. This is, you got me going too many directions at once, boss. I can't keep up with all that literature. I can't know all those different things. Even worse, you might see conflicts of interest. For example, I want you to keep things running, keep things stable. I'm talking to Machine Service Bureau, right? But I also want you to pioneer the next generation of platforms-based technologists. That is a conflict of interest. What can you do? And typically firefighting swamps innovation, short-term swamps long-term. Typically the Machine Service Bureau wins out. And when you combine base technologists and Machine Service Bureau, it typically kills the pace of innovation. That's a conflict of interest. Or how about this? I want you to be the primary liaison, the account representative, or the relationship manager with our CFO. But I also want you to be in charge of all of our financial applications. As the consultant, the account consultant to the CFO, you want to be business-driven and sell the whole store. You want to be unbiased. Maybe what that CFO is doing is a pricing study on behalf of marketing and really needs access to market data and some models to model feature value utilities and price elasticities. But what are you going to recommend? Better access to historic general ledger data? You see the conflict of interest. On one hand, you're expected to be unbiased and business-driven, and yet when you come home, we are paying you to be biased, biased in the good sense, the bias being a specialist in one subset of our product line, the financial applications. That's a conflict of interest. Third question, scattered campus. This is where you see a color scattered all over the organization chart. Well, one thing you'll suspect is loss of the campus effect. They don't get together to swap tricks of the trade and share experiences. They're not learning enough from one another. But more seriously, where do they all meet? You take a given line of business, if they don't meet until you get up to CIO level, well, whose job is it to be sure that whole domain of technology or of service is covered completely without overlaps and without gaps? Only the CIO is where they meet. And the CIO is essentially the president of a multi-million-dollar high-tech business within a business. He or she doesn't have time to be adjudicating domains at lower levels. So this often results, scattered campus often results in domain overlaps. Yeah, I'm doing that. Yeah, no, I am too. And perhaps coming up with different answers. Or domain gaps. Hey, I thought that was yours. No, I thought you were doing it. And we miss opportunities. Fourth question, inappropriate substructure. This is where, and you can't see this just from the colors, you have to look at the words as well as the colors. This is where you see an organization divided up at the next level by something other than what they're supposed to be good at. So for example, what if we were to divide applications technologists by business unit? We might end up with half a dozen different general ledger systems, all reinventing, one per business unit. Or if we, well, okay, enough examples. Inappropriate substructure is where the basis for substructure doesn't match what people are supposed to be good at, so they get good at something other than what they're supposed to be doing. The common ones in IT, I've kind of mentioned a few. The common gaps, account consultancy, retail consultancy, marketing consultancy, many of the coordinators, and some of the people service bureaus. If consultancy is a part-time job for senior managers, a gap, you're going to see the effects in terms of weakened relationships with the business, a lack of strategic alignment, and perhaps missed opportunities of strategic systems. Just as an example. Rainbows, the most common are, I mentioned, application technologists combined with account consultancy. The head of financial systems is also the relationship manager to the CFO. Bad combination. Or the combination of Machine Service Bureau with base technologist platforms. You're both infrastructure engineering and infrastructure operations. Again, a conflict of interest. The most common scattered campus in IT is the base technologists. They're typically spread all over an organization chart. And as far as inappropriate substructure, what I see most commonly is applications technologists divided by business unit and Machine Service Bureaus by platform rather than by service. So I'd like you to imagine now that you're doing your own rainbow exercise and asking these 4 questions. That will tell you whether or not structure is indeed an issue there. Now, I don't mean to be accusing you of not making your objectives. I don't mean to be accusing you of poor performance. What I'm saying is this is a way of finding out if your organizational structure is getting in the way of the performance of your great people. We can turn this around and talk about how to build a healthy organization chart. Gaps? Well, don't do it. Make sure every building block is somewhere. If you're a small organization, well, then you don't have to hire into every building block, but you have to have a manager whose job is to go get the contractors when we need them, to know a good one from a bad one, to manage those contractors to our standards of excellence, and to let us know when the business has grown to the point where it's worth hiring. Every building block has to be somewhere. As far as rainbows, if you're a small organization, you're going to have to combine some of these building blocks into jobs. Combine vertically, not horizontally. It's better to ask a manager to cover a few different machine service bureaus than both base tech and a machine service bureau horizontally. As you cluster these lines of business on the organization chart, like look at your tier 1 leaders reporting to your CIO, what's under each of them? Cluster by similar professions. Let's presume we can all talk to everybody, each other, we can all team across boundaries. So put together the building blocks under a senior executive that are similar in profession, basically by the columns. And as you divide up at the next level, think carefully about what are these people supposed to be good at, and that will tell you the basis for substructure. Phew. Now, none of this is going to work. That beautiful organization chart you just designed in your head isn't going to work if we can't team across boundaries. So let's talk about how to make very high performance teamwork a practical reality. And I'll tell you that no competent practitioner of organizational structure will treat one without the other. You always treat organization chart and teamwork together, because when you change the org chart, you're going to change the patterns, the workflows, the patterns of teamwork. So these are two sides of the same coin. You have to treat them together. So what do we mean by high-performance teamwork? Teams are self-forming. You don't have to go all the way up to a common boss to put together a team. And that means they form automatically, laterally, not hierarchically, with just the right people at just the right time. It's not a fixed team for a whole project. People may come and go as needed. If you're building a house, the framers come in, they put up the framing, they leave. Sometime later, the sheetrock comes in, the plumber comes in, and when the plumber's done, the plumber leaves. It's not a fixed project team for the whole project. People come and go as needed. And within this project team, teams are self-managing, which means they can resolve issues within the team. That's based on clear individual accountability. Everybody knows exactly what they're there to deliver, and a clear chain of command or flow of accountability. Now, the business within a business paradigm can deliver exactly this through internal customer-supplier relationships. Picture this. For any project or any service, there ought to be one and only one group that's in the business of selling that. That's because we have clear organizational structure, clear org chart, clear domains. Let's call that person, that group, the prime contractor. And the first job of the prime is to line up the subs. So if you're buying a house, the general contractor has to line up the plumber and the electrician and so on. If you're building an application, you may need to, the apps engineers are the prime, and they may need to subcontract for database engineering and for platform engineering and for installation into production and so on. So for any project, there's a prime and there's subs, and there could be subs to subs. But in that way, with everybody acting as an entrepreneur and buying what they need laterally from one another, and when I say buy, I don't mean money changes hands. This is just a paradigm. What happens is teams form automatically. You go buy what you need from your peers. Everybody knows exactly what they're there to deliver. They come in, they deliver, they leave. Teams are dynamic. Everybody has clear definition of the results they're selling. You're not hiring a warm body onto the team. You're buying a specific deliverable. So you have clear individual accountability, and from prime to sub, you have a clear chain of command. High-performance teamwork based on the business within a business paradigm. So we implement that with walkthroughs. A walkthrough says, okay, here's a real-life project. What's the first thing the client might want to buy? Well, the client might want to buy contract brokerage from the account consultancy. Account consultant, do you need any help with that? No? Okay, you're done. What's the next thing the client might want to buy? Well, the client might want to buy a solution alternative study, as in a feasibility and scope study, from the applications technologist. Applications technologists, do you need any help? And they say, yes, I need the same solution alternative study on the platforms we're going to use from the base technologists. Base technologists, do you need any help? And they say, yes, because an alternative study comes with life cycle costs, I'm going to need some cost estimates from the Machine Service Bureau because I can't quote anybody's cost but my own. That would be disempowering. Okay, Service Bureau, do you need any help? Nope. Base Tech, do you need any help? Nope. Apps Tech, do you need anything else? Yeah, I need some professional writing for the documentation from the People Service Bureau, and so on. So what you see here is a walkthrough in business-like language. This becomes the basis for forming a team and the basis for project management. Now you can imagine your PMO then can take this into a work breakdown structure and PERT chart and Gantt chart and all that. But coming to an understanding of who's here to sell what to whom, whether or not money changes hands, just business-like language, this walkthrough is the basis for high-performance teamwork. And it's the basis for good project management as well. All based on the business within a business paradigm, all derived from the organization chart, what business you're in. Phew. I know this has been a lot in just a few minutes. I'll just say a few words on how to implement a world-class restructuring, and then we'll open it up for your questions. With regard to implementation, let me tell you that the typical approach, CIO gets in the back room, maybe with some consultants, maybe with his direct or her direct reports. They cook up some boxes on an organization chart, put some names in boxes, announce it one day, and hope for the best. That doesn't work. You know this from your own personal experience. Been there, done that, right? What you end up doing then is floundering around in public, in front of your clients, in front of your staff, trying to figure out how this new organization is going to work. And it either you finally get it after years of fumbling, or it reverts back to old ways or back to stovepipes. There is a better way. Here is the structural cybernetics process. First, we gather together the leadership team and go through this material, the same material that you just saw, at a much more reasonable pace, of course, a 2-day workshop. And we do the rainbow together and validate that we really need to look at structure. Then they have a homework assignment. Using this language, go off and design the ideal organization chart. And they do this individually. And then we put them all in a room, and we come to consensus on a new organization chart, boxes, no names. Then the leader, the CIO, puts names in boxes, tier 1, puts names in boxes. They craft clear domain statements of boundaries. They develop their catalogs, service catalogs, and they do walkthroughs until they get it. And we've got that leadership team in a place where you can corner any one of those leaders and present a real-life project or service and get a walkthrough on the spot that's pretty much the same answer everyone else would give. Now you've got a leadership team ready to go prime time. We haven't turned the switch yet. We're still in planning mode. The old organization is still operating business as usual. We're developing a leadership team that's really going to make the new organization work. Then and only then are they prepared to roster the rest of the staff and the vendors and the contractors. Then, step 7, announcement day, we turn the switch, turn on the new organization, new reporting relationships. But then all of our team members need some education in small groups about how things are supposed to work. And then there's a very meticulous migration process of moving accountabilities from one group to another where they need to move. And the majority will stay put based on the way you roster people. But there will be some things that have to move around, and we've got to be sure the other organization's ready to receive before we let go of the steering wheel, right? So that's migration. In a large organization, we do it in 2 passes. We do the tier 1s, and once the tier 1s really get it and do their walkthroughs, then they design tier 2, and we engage tier 2 leaders until they've done enough walkthroughs to really be working as a team. And then we go on to roster the rest of the staff, announce, and migrate. So when we do it with all this careful planning before announcement day, you really get the full effects of the new organization very quickly. You hit the ground running. The benefits you'd expect to get from an effective organizational restructuring are many. We eliminate friction with one another. We enhance teamwork. We flatten the organization. We empower people. We build jobs that people can win at. We cultivate an entrepreneurial spirit and a tremendous pace of innovation. We drive home customer focus, whether your customers are others within IT or clients out there in the business, and a focus on being a competitive entrepreneur and delivering quality at a fair price. And It's a structure designed to innovate again and again reliably over time. An organization designed from the ground up to succeed. To me, really great leadership is that. It's not making the tough decisions and coming up with the brilliant strategies and head of the phalanx leading the charge. To me, really great leadership is building an organization in which everyone can succeed with or without you. And with that, let me open the floor to questions. Sonika, did we get any questions?
Yes, Dean, thanks. That was a very interesting presentation. We are running slightly short on time, so I'll ask you just a few questions, and to let the audience know that the questions are being presented in the order they were received. So if your question has not been answered today, we may answer them in an email to you. So the first question, I'm sorry?
Yeah, get in touch with me if we don't get to your question today. I'd be pleased to chat. But go on, your first question.
Sounds good. So Dean, what's the best way to know if we need to restructure an organization?
I would think the rainbow exercise would be tremendously revealing. Maybe we do a short version of that. We introduce the picture of the CIO and all of the direct reports, I call them tier 1 leaders, in a room for perhaps 2/3 of a day. And we start off by defining the building block, the principles in the building blocks, and then we look at your actual organization chart and color code it together and go through the 4 questions. And by early afternoon, your leadership team should be at a point of consensus as to whether or not we live with what we got, or we need a little tweak, a few adjustments here and there, or whether we should embark on a clean sheet of paper design. Think of that rainbow exercise, and even if you come out validating that your current organization is great, it'll be very insightful to help everybody define their lines of business, and it'll answer the question once and for all, do we need to restructure?
Sounds good. When you speak about specialty, aren't people motivated more by variety rather than being boxed into a specialty?
I've heard that, but in fact, when you run a little business within a business, your business is highly focused on a product line, be that, for example, DBMS engineering or server platform engineering, but it's tremendously diverse in that you're an empowered entrepreneur running a whole business. So you've got to look after supporting your existing product line, you've got to look after innovation in your product line, continually evolving your catalog, you've got to deliver your products and services, you've got to manage people. So being an entrepreneur for a well-focused business still has a whole bunch of variety. The top of the T is running a business, although the bottom of the T is highly focused. So I don't think this is job narrowing. What job narrowing means is the guy on the assembly line just bolting a door on a car day after day. It's not that at all. There's tremendous variety here. And let me remind you, who gets the big money out there? Who gets the high salaries? It's the specialist, not the generalist, isn't it?
Absolutely.
For people's careers. Sonika?
One of our audience members wants to says that, we've tried team building. It really hasn't helped much. So how can this work within our culture?
Team building typically focuses on relationships between the people, the trust exercises and the Myers-Briggs and all that. Let me tell you something. As a consultant, I spend a lot of time traveling. And so my quality of life is very much controlled by my travel agent. His name is Tom. You know what? I've never met Tom in person. It's not that we need a tight interpersonal relationship to work together. He knows his business. He knows what I'm buying from him. He delivers on expectations. When you look at the way I describe teamwork, it's not really a matter of, okay, let's all like each other so that we can figure this out together. There are very clear patterns here, very clear expectations, individual accountabilities. This is business. So I don't think team building in the traditional sense is going to do you a lot of good if your organizational structure is messed up, if it doesn't allow you to team through those walkthroughs, or worse, if it pits you against one another through overlapping or vague territories. Team building isn't the answer. Let's get the structure right, and then team building can be a lubricant on a well-designed machine. Sonika?
Dean, how do we, or that's the next question, how do we or can we create checks and balances within an internal organization?
Well, one thing you don't want is one person whose job is to look over the shoulder and judge another person. That is internal audit. That is just asking for all kinds of friction and disagreement. So a better way, I would say, is 360-degree reviews. If everybody is evaluated not just based on the opinions of the boss, not just based on the opinions of their subordinates, but on the opinions of their customers and then their suppliers. Are their customers within IT and out in the client community satisfied? And are they delivering good value compared to the competition? And is their product line innovative and up to date? Do they deliver impeccably on every promise? And on the other side, their suppliers, are they teaming well through walkthroughs and using others buy instead of make with their peers effectively? So I think a 360-degree review is the right kind of checks and balance. It reinforces empowerment and entrepreneurship and customer-supplier relationships rather than disempowering through audit. Sonika?
It's interesting you'd say that because I have seen that before and it really does work. The final question is on motivation. How do we motivate, people within the organization to excel?
Well, motivation starts with the nature of the job. I asked a bunch of entrepreneurs. I was actually down in Guatemala doing a workshop with some of their top entrepreneurs, and I asked them, why do you love your job? And there were a bunch of quotes, which I wrote down dutifully, verbatim. And when you looked at it, all these quotes fell into two categories. One is empowerment. They said, I like being in control of my destiny. I like being able to reap the rewards of my work, or not if I fail. I like that empowerment. And the second thing is identity with results. I like the feeling of going out and creating something that's useful to the world, that pleases my customers. So designing job, first and foremost, in terms of motivation, it's not pep talks. It's, is this a rewarding job? Are you empowered to run your little piece of the business your way and be measured by results, not without a lot of meddling in how you get there? And do you have some identity with results? Like, hey, I made that. That's my product. That's my service. And my customers are happy with it. So designing an organization around internal entrepreneurship, the business within a business paradigm, through these building blocks is the starting point for motivation. And then once you've done that, again, the feedback loops, the 360-degree reviews, and the customer satisfaction surveys are the final piece, the metrics that associate rewards with performance. Sonika?
I think I'll stop here with the questions, and as I mentioned that if we didn't get to your question, we'll certainly try our best to get an answer out to you. I hand it back over to you, Dean, for some closing statement that you'd like to make.
I'd like to close by challenging our attendees with a question. What are you going to do as a result of what we've discussed in the last hour? Was it just like an interesting hour and you're going to do nothing, or not so interesting hour, I'm afraid, and you're going to do nothing, A? Or are you going to maybe suggest that we tweak the organization chart a little bit, adjust some boundaries? Or C, do we need a clean sheet of paper redesign of the organization chart? Or D, the full process, the organization chart and the workflows? So I'd like to leave you with the challenge of thinking about that, and maybe even thinking about an internal rainbow workshop to bring your leadership team together on the answer to this question. And with that, let me say thanks so much for coming to my webinar. Sonika and Saurabh, thank you for inviting me to Cioindex. This was really fun. And if I can be of service to any of you, please do contact me. The book, The Building Blocks Approach to Organization Charts, is available on Amazon and in Kindle form. And there's a whole library of free white papers, case studies, research reports at ndma.com. And please do get in touch if you'd like to chat privately on the phone. Sonika, thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you so much for this very interesting presentation. And I thank you all once again for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed and gained from this webinar. As you know, your feedback is appreciated as we continually strive to improve upon what we deliver to our members. You may send your feedback to our webmaster. Our next webinar, Running IT Like a Business, is scheduled for November 14th. please visit our events page at cioindex.com to sign up. As mentioned earlier, this webinar has been recorded. You will be able to access the recording through our events page at cioindex.com under our archived events. Thank you, Dean, and thank you all. Have a great day.